Hello and welcome to the Snickerdoodle Knits YouTube channel. I am Jessica, the knitter and designer behind Snickerdoodle Knits. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about how to drop one color and pick up another. This is for color work. That technique is specifically just when you're working one row at a time of different colors. You're not using multiple colors within the same row. I'll also show how we use both colors in a single row in a little bit. This tutorial, while I'm recording it, is specifically for the on the road again hat and cowl patterns. So this is the hat, and here you can see, of course, we're using two colors. So what this tutorial is to show you how to pick up your second color here, and then how to drop it again and pick up your main color, and then how to work both colors together, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, this is the cowl. It's the same motif. And then I was just going to show you the insides. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is when we're carrying the yarn up the side here, when we're not using it. So here we have multiple rows of the main color. And this is the strand here of the contrast color that I just carry up. And that's the same in the hat. So here you can just see that I'm carrying it. So that's what I'm doing when I say drop the main color, pick up the contrast color, and then when you're done with the contrast color, we drop the contrast color and pick up the main color. Alrighty, so here I am going to drop my this is my main color now, and pick up my contrast color. When you're doing your first drop and pick up, you will just take the end of your second color, leave a bit of yarn so that you have an end to weave in. And just start knitting with that second color here when we pick it up. So I'll get my needle situated here. So I have been working, and it looks like I have two stitches I need to take care of here that dropped. Have been working in the main color here. Now I want to do a solid line of contrast color. So all I'm going to do is just let go of that main color and pick up the contrast color. And again, what I was just saying is if it's your first time to work the contrast color, just leave a bit of an end and just start working with the yarn. But all we do is pick that up and start knitting. Now, when you've already been working with it for a while, I recommend leaving just a little bit of slack in your tension here for this first stitch. And that's because of this jog here. Let's see. Where's the side? Here. This jog here, you want to make sure that there's plenty of yarn here so that it's not going to tug on the fabric. If I had pulled this tight here, it would cause like a bit of a dimple in the fabric. It would have been tight and it would have been obvious from the other end that it wasn't working right. So be sure to leave a little bit of just leave it a little bit loose here, more loose than you normally would. And what sometimes I might do is go ahead after I've knit a couple stitches, just pull on them a little bit to help lengthen that. And really having it more loose than necessary is better than having it too tight. Like this is probably a little looser than it needs to be, but I'd much rather that because that's not obvious when I'm looking at the fabric. So then now I just work with the contrast color, and I'm going to go ahead and work to the end of this needle. Right now I'm working magic loop, so I'll just work to the end of this half that's on this needle, and I'll demonstrate again how to connect the yarn on this. Alright, sorry about that. My camera quit recording partway through. So when I was here at the center where the two needles meet for magic loop, if you're using DPNs, that's just where your needles meet there. I was just saying that you just need to pull your yarn snug here like you normally would between two needles to keep that fabric together so that it looks right. But then when we're using two colors, we want to have the yarn that we're bringing across looser, but I'll demonstrate that when we get there. So when you're just using one color, it's always just the same as normal. So now I've gotten to the end of this round and I want to drop this color and pick up the other color. So again, I've been working with this color here, so I just drop it, just let it go, and pick up the next color. And again, I am going to keep it just a little bit loose so that I'm not pulling that too tight there where I'm bringing this up a row. So basically, I just skipped knitting around with this gray color. So there's going to be a little bit of a gap here where I bring that yarn up to meet me where I am, and you just continue knitting as per normal. So here I'm just going to be knitting a few rounds in this color, and then I'll be back to show you how to work when we're working with two colors at the same time. Just a quick demonstration of how to work two-stranded colorwork. So I'll see you there. All right, so here I'm at a point where I need to be working two colors at a time. So you'll notice that in the pattern, it doesn't say to drop the color I've been working with. Instead, we just pick up the second color. Now, since this one just has a couple of stitches with the color that I've been working, go ahead and work those. And for two-stranded, there's multiple ways to do stranded color work. You can hold one strand in each finger, each hand. You can use a tool specific for color work. You can literally pick up and drop the strands each time you use them. But the idea is that we're using both strands throughout the round. So they both need to be accessible to you throughout the round. What I like to do is the yarn that the color that I'll be using most, that has the most stitches, I like to just have that in my left hand. And then the other color I like to have in my right hand. So then this one, and then when you get to the next color, which is another point I forgot to bring up here, when you're joining this second color here, I'll go back. When you're joining this second color here, you need to make sure that this strand of yarn here is plenty loose enough. So just like at the beginning, like I mentioned down here when we were joining in that color, we want to make sure that's plenty loose. So again, we can loosen up those stitches just to pull that yarn there. So we want it plenty loose to reach all the way from a few rows down and a few stitches over where we were last using that color. Oops, sorry, I'm off the screen. So this yarn is going to need to stretch from where we're currently working all the way to the last time we worked with that color, which was a few stitches over and a few rows down. So we just need to make sure that's nice and loose there for working. All right, now, next thing I was going to mention is that when you bring your new color over, so when you're alternating between colors, you need to make sure you leave enough of a stretch of yarn behind these stitches that it doesn't tug on your fabric. So I just like to leave all of those stitches pretty loose while I'm knitting, just so that I have plenty of yarn here. So I'll show that here on the finished cowl, the blocked one. So inside you can see these are what are referred to as floats, just where the yarn floats behind the other stitches. So you want those to be plenty loose that they just lay nice and flat. You don't want them to be extremely loose because then it does make the stitches look a bit loose and baggy. But that's kind of, it's a matter of getting used to your tension. It'll take some practice, but for the most part, I kind of just like to try to keep these stitches spaced apart and then just bring that yarn behind them. So again, here, that yarn now spans behind those 2 gray stitches that I just did. And again here, so I kind of just like to pull those apart just a little bit. So that that yarn will span across nicely. And again, don't worry if this is a bit difficult to start with. It definitely takes some practice. I'm definitely not the best colorwork knitter out there, but I have learned a few tips and tricks, so I'm happy to share those. And we just continue like this throughout the rest of the round. Now, if you're working a different pattern that has more than these 3 stitches, usually if you have 5 or more, you can do what is called catching your floats, where essentially you just twist the yarn around the other color while you're working to catch those floats so that they're not nearly as long. I don't want to go into detail on that in this video because that's not what we're focused on, but you can find plenty of tutorials on YouTube relating to colorwork. So that's just the idea of how to drop and pick up your colors and then how to go ahead and work with multiple colors throughout the round. So when you're dropping for your solid line, you really just drop the yarn and pick up the next one, and always make sure you leave enough space when you're joining that yarn can extend across the fabric as it needs to. And then when we're working multiple colors, we just need to make sure we keep that yarn loose enough in the back that it's not pulling on the fabric. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful and informative. If you did, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the Snickerdoodle Knits YouTube channel for additional knitting content like this. I have technique tutorials for my patterns on my on the Snickerdoodle Knits channel, and I also have a design overview for each of my patterns. So I talk about all of the information behind the pattern so that you can make an informed decision before you decide whether you want to knit a project or not. So I look forward to seeing you around, and happy knitting!